Hello and welcome to Adobe Photoshop. If you're watching this video, then you're probably intending to use Photoshop in the classroom, or perhaps you wish to use it for recreation or a secondary career. Whatever the case may be, I will show you all the basics that you need to know in order to start making creations like these. My name is Christian Burkett and I'll be your guide to this useful program. Now a lot of people have some misconceptions about Photoshop. Number 1, Photoshop is for editing photographs. Actually, this program serves a wide variety of purposes. Anything that involves images, period, can be altered in Photoshop, not just photographs. Number 2, Photoshop is very complex and hard to learn. This is not true. Out of all the programs I've come across, I can honestly tell you that Photoshop is one of the easier to learn. It really isn't complicated or cryptic in any way. I taught myself how to use it without any real help, and I can guarantee that you could do the same. But we are all busy men and women, so there's no need for mundane trial and error. I'm going to give you all the info you need to know here to save you the trouble I had to go through. The first thing we need to do is open up a new project. You do this by going up to File, in the toolbar, clicking New. And that's it. It's pretty much just like Microsoft Word. Now, you'll be presented with all these options. First is name. Don't worry about this. We can give our project a name once we save it later. Preset should always be set to custom. That way you can control all of the below things. With your sizing of your project, you should always set it to inches. Well, maybe not always. Maybe in some cases you might want to have a specific number of pixels, but that's incredibly rare and you really don't need to worry about that. Just set it to inches for now. And you can adjust the width and height by changing the numbers. The resolution should always be set to 300 unless you are doing something with really low resolution images, or if you're working on something really small like a business card, you might want a lower resolution in that case. Color mode should always be set to RGB color unless you are wanting to do something entirely black and white, in which case you'd set it to grayscale. The rest of the things you don't really need to worry about. And it should be 16-bit. 32-bit can sometimes mess with your tools, like your Magic Wand tool, which we'll get into later. So just set it to 16-bit. It's the only way you should need to have it. And finally, we have background contents. This should always be set to transparent. Trust me, it gets really confusing if you have a solid color in the background. And that's it, and let's see what our new blank project looks like. The gray and white tiles represent the transparent background. So whenever you save your project, it might show these in the background, but when you actually import your project into something else, it will be transparent. And so this will take a bit of time to get used to. It might be prudent to tell you now how to save your project once you're done with it. You go up to File, then go to Save As. Here you can choose where you're going to save your project. You can adjust the project name, make sure you don't delete these last 4 characters, the period and these 3. Don't delete those. Those are that's the format. So if you mess with that, then your file will be all screwed up. Go to Format, and you can adjust your various formats. You can put it as a PNG. You sometimes get the option of a JPEG. And it should be noted right now that PSD is the Photoshop format. So this means that your project will still be intact with all its layers and all its properties intact. We'll get more into those properties later. But just remember that if you want your project to be saved as it is and not as a final image, put it as PSD. Before we start our project, we have to make sure all the right windows are open. Like this right here, the layers window, that's a window. And so is this. You can adjust your windows by going up to Window and then checking which ones you want. The only ones you really need to have open are Layers, Options, and Tools. The tools window contains your tools, the tools you will be using to do things in Photoshop and to adjust your pictures. And then your options menu is what allows you to adjust your tools, and it changes for each tool that you have. Finally, we have our layers window. This is the first window we will be going into detail with. Now there are some windows that will be in Photoshop by default. These include the Colors, Navigator, and History windows. Just get rid of any windows except the ones I have selected, Layers, Options, and Tools. You really won't be needing them. I don't even use them. So that should tell you something, that they're not really necessary. Though you may eventually want to use them, I personally don't, and they won't be covered in this tutorial. Now before we can get back to the layers window, I think I should first import a few pictures so I can show you how layers work. To import pictures, you simply drag them from the desktop onto Photoshop, or you can go to File, then Open, then Browse for them. So here's one of my pictures. To get them actually in your project, you have to go to your selection tool and select it and copy and paste it. I'll go back into the selection tools and you'll see how all that works later on.